Desperate for answers, a Halifax family begs for help finding 26-year-old Loretta Saunders, who vanished last week while pregnant. 8 days have passed since that young Inuit woman blinked out of existence in Nova Scotia. Her car surfaced in southern Ontario, but Loretta remains a ghost, leaving investigators and relatives haunted by unanswered questions. 14 days ago, 26-year-old Halifax student Loretta Saunders simply evaporated. A massive wave of volunteers united, driven by one goal: bringing her back alive. An Indigenous leader spoke out after the grim discovery her body was found, confirming a brutal homicide. The case began on February 13, 2014, in Halifax, Canada. Criminology student Loretta Saunders, 26, leaves her house to collect rent from her subtenants. A routine task, perfectly ordinary. A few quick stops before heading home, except she never walks back through that door. By morning, her boyfriend gets a text from her phone that feels off. Something isn't right. "I'm so stressed I forgot my own mom's maiden name." Seriously. Minutes later, another pops up. "Staying at a friend's tonight. Catch you later." It felt wrong. These clipped, cold texts didn't sound like Loretta. Her family's internal alarms started screaming instantly. Loretta was a constant communicator, checking in with family nearly every hour of the day. When that connection snapped, the silence was deafening. Days crawled by with 0 sightings and 0 contact. Her vehicle was gone, yet everything she owned remained untouched inside her apartment. Surveillance footage captured her entering the building that morning to confront her renters. She's never seen leaving on camera, yet her debit card starts pinging later that night. Shop cameras show a stranger using Loretta's plastic. Another swipe, another chilling frame. A different face is now driving her car, which police eventually tracked down hundreds of miles from Halifax. Sheltering nearby were the very same tenants who had been staying at Loretta's place. Scouring the apartment security tapes, investigators see one specific detail that makes them freeze the frame. February 13th, 2:30 p.m. A tenant exits the building. He's hauling a massive, heavy hockey bag, followed by several others. A horrific theory starts forming. He was likely moving her remains out of that apartment, bag by bag. When authorities closed in, the reality was sickening, leaving even seasoned officers in total shock. Some broke down in tears once they realized the senseless motive behind the killing. To unravel the truth of what happened to Loretta, we have to trace this back to the very start. Okay guys, quick break. I'm dying to know where everyone is tuning in from. Drop your city and current time in the chat. Love seeing where the community is at. Comment below, and we'll get back to it. 26-year-old Loretta Saunders was standing at life's threshold. She was a criminology major at St. Mary's University in Halifax. One of 8 siblings, Loretta belonged to a tight-knit family that defied the distance between them. They were inseparable, regardless of the miles. An Indigenous woman from Newfoundland and Labrador, Loretta had already survived a lifetime of hardship. Her family had weathered storm after storm for years. Her sibling, DM, later revealed they both endured horrific physical and sexual trauma during childhood. With little schooling available, they both eventually spiraled into the dark world of addiction. Just as she hit adulthood, she risked everything to start fresh in Montreal. Truthfully, that move nearly broke her. Her mother, Miriam, watched helplessly as Loretta succumbed to a crushing dependency. She hit rock bottom, living on the pavement, but she refused to let the habit bury her. Fixated on recovery, she hit the methadone clinic and slowly pieced her broken world back together. Once her life finally stabilized, she secured a spot at St. Mary's University. Getting that acceptance letter felt like a massive victory, a true turning point. Her path was set. Finish her degree, then fight for justice as a lawyer. When choosing her senior thesis, she picked her focus in a heartbeat. She dedicated her research to the crisis of missing Indigenous women in Canada. She wanted to amplify voices that history ignored, fueled by her family's past. She even dreamed of documenting these untold stories on film someday. At the same time, her personal world was finally falling into place. She and Yelchin Sulti had been a solid team for nearly 3 years. After visiting Turkey, Yelchin knew she was the one. Just before the news broke, Loretta was 3 months pregnant and absolutely glowing about starting her own family. Living with Yelchin now, she decided to sublet her old place for extra cash. Everything was looking up for Loretta Saunders as she reinvented her future. A fresh chapter was beginning, and a new baby was on the way. Graduation was 2 months away, until February 14th, 2014, changed everything. Yelchin was spiraling, asking if anyone had seen Loretta since the previous day. He described 2 unsettling texts from her that felt cold and wrong. Strangely, her online banking access had also been suddenly cut off. One text claimed she was so stressed she'd forgotten her own mother's maiden name. It seemed completely bizarre, seriously. Another message said she'd be staying with a mysterious friend he didn't even know. The messages were blunt and offered no real explanation for her absence. As the hours ticked by, her parents were consumed by a growing dread. Loretta never went an hour without checking in, making this silence terrifying. Days passed in a blur of desperate phone calls and dead ends. Her car vanished, yet all her daily essentials remained untouched at the house. By the 3rd day of silence, the authorities officially filed a missing person report. Detectives soon arrived at the home she shared with Yelchin to investigate. Yelchin, the last to see her, recounted her busy schedule for February 13th. She was meant to be balancing a mountain of errands with her university studies. Her morning started with a trip to her apartment to collect rent money. After that, she was supposed to be on the move all afternoon. He told police she seemed perfectly fine when she left that morning. Loretta was always the calm, organized type who never missed a beat. Those erratic texts felt like they came from a complete stranger. After searching the house, police were convinced Yelchin was genuinely terrified for her. Officers then headed to her apartment at 41 Cowie Hill Drive, Unit 103. The unit was silent, but nothing inside pointed to a struggle. The rooms were spotless, and not a single item seemed out of place. Neighbors noted the tenants had left for a Valentine's trip and hadn't returned. Surveillance cameras at the entrance kept a watchful eye on the doorway. The tape showed Loretta entering the building just before 11 o'clock on February 13th. Since she'd been gone for 4 days, detectives had a mountain of footage. They considered if she'd hidden inside while the tenants were away before vanishing. Investigators meticulously checked every exit to ensure no detail was missed. Relatives of a Halifax woman who vanished are begging for any leads. Expecting a child, 26-year-old Loretta Saunders simply evaporated 7 days ago. Detectives scoured her Halifax flat for days, yet the haunting riddle remains. Where did Loretta go? A resilient Anuk woman from Labrador. She was finally turning her difficult life around before vanishing. Desperate for clues, supporters are flooding the city with a fresh wave of missing posters. Next week, more kin arrive in Halifax to face this agonizing void as one. They are begging the nation for any sightings of her vehicle or hidden details. Her sheer grit fuels my hope, as I know she would hate seeing us, paralyzed by grief or self-pity. She is brilliant, the very center of my universe. This college student phoned home religiously until the line went dead on February 13th. Total silence followed. We first crossed paths through mutual acquaintances back in the city. Her partner claims her trail went cold after last Thursday. According to him, she was heading over to meet her tenants. She sounded frayed, mentioning a lockout and some urgent digital banking issues involving cash. I am so rattled I have forgotten basic facts, she fretted. We must find her. A massive social media hunt is now underway to track her down. Crowdfunding ignited to ferry her loved ones from Labrador across the water to Nova Scotia. The mission: unite 5 brothers and their parents to weather this storm side by side. Funds poured in rapidly, finally allowing the fractured family to gather and wait. Investigators questioned her renters, Blake and Victoria, who mirrored the same story of total silence. They insisted they were far from the city during her disappearance. Claiming they were 200 miles away, they offered nothing but dead ends. Suddenly, her plastic came to life, pinging sensors with a series of tap-to-pay transactions. A flicker of optimism struck. Could Loretta still be alive and moving through the shadows? Just before 5 on February 13th, her account was accessed at a local shop. Video showed her car idling outside, but the stranger handling her card was definitely not Loretta. Moments later, a coffee shop 10 miles away logged another hit on her account. Footage caught a figure in blue. As the clerk turned, the driver's face momentarily emerged. That driver was clearly not Loretta. 5 days on, a ringing phone brought a lead from a distant precinct. Her vehicle had surfaced hundreds of miles westward in the town of Harrow. Stashed at a residence, the car led police straight to her renters, Blake and Victoria. Though jailed for auto theft, the mystery of Loretta's whereabouts remained a dark void. Police scrambled to link the duo to her fate and uncover where she was hidden. 8 days since she vanished. Her car was recovered, but Loretta remains a ghost. A mountain of unanswered questions now haunts both the law and her kin. This Ontario driveway is where her missing vehicle finally came to light. Her tenants now face hard time for car theft and draining her bank account. Prosecutors are hitting them with counts of fraudulent use regarding Loretta's credit. "I am terrified they have got her stashed away," her mother whispered, clinging to hope. Detectives are heading west to extradite the suspects while digging for any physical clues. Blake spun a tale about purchasing the car from Loretta just before his departure. He claimed the deal was a steal cheaper than a one-way flight out of town. While he played innocent, background checks revealed both suspects were already fugitives elsewhere. One skipped a Calgary court date. The other was wanted for menacing locals in Halifax. Authorities discovered Victoria holding the victim's cell, while Blake carried her plastic. The man was caught red-handed with her personal credit cards. Detectives combed through internal security tapes, hunting for any glimpse of the duo that afternoon. At 14:30 on February 13th, cameras caught Blake lugging a suspiciously weighted sports trunk. He dragged the load outside before returning, only to reappear 30 minutes later with additional luggage. This trip, he was weighed down by even more gear. A final departure followed, but this time, Victoria was lurking right beside him. Given what they already knew, the graininess of the footage felt bone-chilling to the observers. The grim reality set in. Loretta was almost certainly inside that bag, and she wasn't breathing. The pair remained tight-lipped until a deep dive into Blake's digital data revealed a smoking gun. Days earlier, a drunken recording captured the couple spiraling into a dark, heated dispute. "Are you even listening? You hungry? Knock it off. Just stay there and wait for me, all right? Starving? You lack the guts to even mention wanting her dead. Seriously? That wasn't your tone when you brought up killing her before. When was that? Quit inventing targets for me and start being honest for once." "Fine. Then who's the lucky person on your hit list?" Betting Victoria would crack under pressure sooner than Blake, the team played back the incriminating footage. Following a heavy pause, she finally caved, whispering that he was the one who took her life. She claimed he used a bag to choke her out, all to dodge some back rent. That was her pathetic justification for the blood on their hands that day. She framed the nightmare as a desperate reaction to crushing debt and money woes. The real story emerged soon after. Loretta had actually served them an eviction notice. This wasn't some snap judgment. The friction between them had been simmering for months. Between the missed payments and constant excuses, her tolerance for their games had finally hit zero. They were $600 short, and for her, it became a stand for basic decency. Refusing to be a doormat any longer, she headed over to settle the score once and for all. She just wanted her cash and to see them pack their bags for good. Meanwhile, the heat from the precinct only continued to intensify. Interrogators leaned on Victoria, squeezing her for any scrap of truth about the missing student. They pushed her to stop the charade and point them toward where the body was hidden. While the clock ticked, those who loved her were trapped in a purgatory of grief. 14 days into the hunt, Victoria finally broke and agreed to lead them to the site. She took them to a stretch of pavement, barely 300 meters from where the horror began. The search reached its grisly conclusion right there, exactly where she said it would be. 2 weeks back, a 26-year-old scholar from Halifax vanished, sparking a massive community-led manhunt. When the case turned into a murder probe, the local community was left reeling in absolute shock. Complete strangers had found themselves deeply invested in her safe return. The focus shifted to the two suspects caught in Ontario driving the victim's stolen vehicle. The man is scheduled for a court appearance in Halifax tomorrow morning. The woman spent the previous day locked in a room with provincial investigators. By late afternoon, the missing persons case had officially shifted to a homicide file. She was still tucked inside that same oversized sports bag, the very same container used to haul her out of the apartment like unwanted trash. That's how they left her, discarded and forgotten, as if her entire existence could be zipped away. It was that specific revelation that truly amplified the chilling nature of the crime. Medical examiners meticulously dissected the evidence during the postmortem, eventually uncovering a reality more grim than anyone imagined. The verdict was undeniable: oxygen deprivation. This discovery finally validated the dark suspicions hanging over the entire investigation. She was caught in a brutal struggle where every avenue of survival was ruthlessly cut off. Grief hung heavy over St. Mary's campus today as students and faculty gathered to honor the memory of Loretta Saunders. With both housemates facing homicide counts, over 200 mourners packed the university hall to capacity. Not a single seat remained vacant as the community united to mourn the loss of Loretta. We gather to pay our respects and keep her legacy alive. The loss of this promising near graduate has left a deep scar on us all. You were a rare light in this world, and your vibrant energy is desperately missed by everyone who knew you. Rest assured, your memory is etched in our hearts. I can still feel your presence watching over this place. Pending family approval, the university head plans to establish an academic legacy in her name before her loved ones hold their final farewell tomorrow. Her final resting place will be in Goose Bay, Labrador, where the community prepares for her burial. Even after Victoria started talking, the pair initially maintained a united front, pleading not guilty to all allegations. In their preliminary appearances, they stood firm, refusing to acknowledge any involvement in the criminal accusations. This defiance set the stage for a high-stakes legal battle, forcing the state to meticulously build a case against them. Legal counsel attempted to split the proceedings, petitioning the bench to hear the cases of Blake and Victoria in isolation. The defense claimed that individual trials were the only way to prevent one person's statements from unfairly tainting the jury's view of the other. However, the presiding magistrate weighed the request before ultimately shutting down the bid for separation. Having heard both perspectives, the court decreed that the two would face justice simultaneously in a joint hearing. Consequently, the duo was destined to stand together in the dock, facing their accusations as a pair. Yet, just as the narrative seemed set, a jarring twist completely altered the course of the legal drama. On the very doorstep of the trial, their stance crumbled, leading to a shocking reversal in their official testimony. A process expected to span months of complex litigation suddenly pivoted toward an entirely new trajectory. This sudden shift in strategy would fundamentally redefine the next chapter of the legal saga. Tonight, a wave of closure washes over Labrador with the revelation that those responsible for Loretta's end have finally confessed. A formal stipulation of the evidence was entered into the record, detailing the undisputed truth of the matter. This official narrative mapped out the precise chain of events that culminated in the horrific loss of life. By bridging the gaps in the timeline, this report offered the bench a cohesive view of the entire dark incident. As their individual accounts surfaced, the hazy details of that afternoon finally began to crystallize into a clear, albeit grim, picture. Following an exhaustive probe and endless interrogations, the veil was finally lifted on the day's tragic events. Per their testimony, Loretta sat patiently, expecting nothing more than the $600 in back rent she was owed. It should have been a routine errand, a quick exchange before heading out, but the atmosphere shifted with lethal speed. They admitted that Blake crept up from behind and began a sudden, violent assault on her airway. Caught off guard, she engaged in a fierce struggle for survival, clawing for any chance to repel her attacker. In the ensuing chaos, both went down, crashing to the ground as the struggle intensified. He then attempted to cut off her breath using 4 separate plastic layers, yet her will to live remained unbroken as she resisted. She ripped through every obstruction in a frantic bid for air until he resorted to blunt force, striking her head against the hard surface twice. The sheer impact proved overwhelming, and finally, her resistance ceased as she went still. He proceeded to bind her with industrial wrap before concealing her remains inside a large sports carrier. He hauled the heavy load down to the street and stashed it in her vehicle's trunk before they simply drove away, playing it cool. While on the run, they funded their spree with her stolen debit card, though they soon hit a significant snag. Lacking her access code, Victoria resorted to using the victim's own mobile device to bridge the gap. She impersonated the missing woman in texts to her partner, faking normalcy while the true motive for the crime was revealed. They ended a life just to dodge a $600 debt, despite the victim fighting tooth and nail until the end. The evidence paints a picture of ultimate defiance against a senseless act of violence that never should have occurred. Their cold-blooded coordination and the sick cover-up that followed still send chills down everyone's spine. Once the undisputed evidence finally hit the record, Blake copped to first-degree murder, while Victoria admitted to a second-degree charge. His counsel later clarified that the guilty plea was Blake's own choice. He supposedly spared the Saunders, the agony of a grueling multi-week trial where every gruesome detail would be aired in public. A life term was mandatory, the absolute maximum penalty the legal system could throw at him. Effectively, he's never walking out of those prison walls. Yet life has fine print. The judge barred him from even asking for parole for 25 years. That's the baseline wait time for a conviction of this magnitude. Until then, the parole board won't even look at his file. He hits his first chance to apply only after 2.5 decades behind bars, with no promise of freedom. Victoria got life too, but with a much lighter set of strings attached. Her window for a potential release opened significantly sooner. The judge ruled she could petition the board just 10 years into her sentence. It's not a free pass, just a chance to prove she isn't a menace to the public anymore. So despite both getting life terms, their clocks for hitting the exit door started at completely different times. She's got my girl's blood on her hands and walks in 10? That's not justice. Tell me, how is that fair? My tiny pregnant daughter against 2 absolute predators. And they call this justice? 10 years for killing a mother-to-be? Does that sound like justice to anyone? I want the death penalty. I want these stone-cold killers scrubbed from the face of the earth forever. They don't deserve the air we breathe after stealing my daughter and my grandbaby's lives. They showed her zero mercy, so why should the world show them any? On my way into that courtroom, I was deep in prayer, whispering, God, forgive my doubts if you're listening. If she's with you, just make them confess. It's wild, because then it actually happened. It felt like a direct conversation with the Almighty. Every prayer from every supporter was finally heard. I'm grateful, but my heart is just in pieces right now. The pain is unreal. I miss her so much. At least we dodged the nightmare of a trial. I even feel for their folks. It's all just too much to process right now. The bench labeled their actions as vile, gruesome, and gutless. Those stinging words hung in the air, cutting through the silence. This wasn't just legalese. It was a visceral condemnation of their barbaric and pointless cruelty. The legal saga became a soul-crushing marathon for Loretta's kin. Each court date ripped the scabs off, leaving them drowning in a mess of fury and heartbreak. Suddenly, the dam broke. DM lunged at the killers, screaming in pure, unadulterated rage. It was a visceral explosion of years of bottled-up agony finally boiling over. They left the court with the atmosphere still heavy with unresolved bitterness. A voice then rang out, warning Blake that they'd be waiting for the day he ever stepped foot outside. A brief, chilling promise that, for those left behind, closure was still miles away. Come, early 2017. Victoria tried to take it all back, claiming she wasn't mentally fit when she confessed. The bench scrutinized her plea, but shut her down just a few months later. Next, she started spinning tales about her mother's supposed indigenous roots. She attempted to play the heritage card, but officials found zero evidence to back up her claims. These desperate lies felt like a fresh slap in the face to Loretta's loved ones and the whole community. Critics argued that those words were nothing short of a slap in the face to her legacy. The public saw only a calculated ruse, a desperate grab for unearned sympathy and special treatment. Fast forward 2 years, and Victoria was knocking on the doors of a First Nations women's collective. She was fishing for an early release, or, at the very least, a powerful ally for her case. But the board slammed the gate shut after one look. Undeterred, Victoria immediately pivoted to a new strategy. She petitioned for entry into a sacred healing circle and a traditional drum ceremony for Native women. The parole board blinked first and said yes, but the subsequent public explosion was nuclear. The outrage was so fierce and immediate that officials were forced to snatch the permission back. In the end, they ghosted her completely, banning Victoria from every Indigenous-specific program in the system. While this drama unfolded, the ghost of an older tragedy was still pulling at the community's heartstrings. In 2014, 15-year-old Tina Fontaine vanished into thin air, leaving only questions behind. The search ended in heartbreak when the Red River coughed up her remains, confirming the city's worst fears. She was found bound in plastic and discarded like trash. A 53-year-old suspect was caught, but the trial hit a wall. The case lacked the smoking gun of forensic proof, leaving the court no choice but to let him walk. Between the stolen lives of Loretta and Tina, a dark pattern of missing and murdered sisters finally became undeniable. The silent epidemic was finally forced out of the shadows and into the national spotlight. Human rights groups and street-level activists began screaming for a total overhaul of the system. A viral movement dubbed "Am I Next" took over the internet, exposing the systematic hunting of Indigenous women. The demand was clear and loud: a full-scale national investigation into these forgotten crimes. That massive federal probe finally roared to life in 2017, digging through decades of systemic failure. By 2019, the investigation wrapped, leaving a trail of heavy truths and a roadmap to stop the bleeding. Tell me, what was the real spark that brought you to this witness stand? I chose Nova Scotia because this is where they took my daughter, and it's where my strength resides. She broke through my walls, showing me the war against our people and giving me the guts to fight back. I used to be a ghost in my own life, but her death and these new allies have turned me into a witness. Cheryl was a lighthouse in that storm, guiding me until I understood the gravity of our situation. The truth is, this cycle is endless. This wasn't even the first time murder visited my family. We're usually expected to just swallow the pain in silence, abandoned by the world. DM launched a haunting blog titled "A Homicide Survivor's Journey Through Grief." It turned into a raw, obsessive look at the messy and endless labyrinth of losing someone to violence. He didn't just vent his sorrow. He mapped out how a single act of violence permanently alters a human soul. It was a window into the wreckage, the invisible, lingering fallout that casual observers never see. This mission led him to collaborate with Matthew Smiley, the filmmaker behind The Chilling Highway of Tears. The documentary peels back the layers of Canada's most disturbing mystery: the systematic disappearance of First Nations people. The film focuses on the cursed Highway 16, a road that has swallowed lives for generations. This desolate stretch has become a graveyard for Indigenous souls, marked by cold cases and unanswered prayers. Stretching 724 kilometers through British Columbia, it is a landscape of isolation and secrets. The sheer weight of the unresolved disappearances gave the route its terrifying name: the Highway of Tears. A pair of Halifax cinemas opened their doors for a special, high-stakes viewing of the film. Every ticket sold was a brick in the foundation of the Loretta Saunders Memorial Scholarship. This fund was built to arm Indigenous women with the education they need to fight for their future. For those in the seats, it wasn't a movie night, it was a vigil for a fallen sister. It was a calculated move to keep her spirit alive and fuel the revolution she started. DM made it clear that the screening served one obsession: absolute remembrance. They were keeping her work alive, ensuring her struggle for justice would haunt the conscience of the country forever. Imagine her standing here, a visionary writer paired with a brilliant filmmaker and creator. They were destined to lead this fight, yet she's become another cold, faceless statistic. Every subconscious choice I make is a secret tribute to her hidden presence. Shortly after, DM was honored with the Ambassador of Conscience Award by Amnesty International. The wisdom she imparted during her fleeting time on Earth remains my most profound secret. Her spirit remains my compass. I offer our tragedy as a roadmap for others lost in darkness. September 2021 brought a devastating revelation from Miriam Saunders that shattered their remaining peace. DM had passed away. For his loved ones, the news tore open old, jagged scars. The suffocating grief from Loretta's loss came flooding back, drowning the family once more. Tragedy leaves deep, invisible scars. Loretta's death broke many, but DM truly shattered. His secret war with addiction turned into a full-scale invasion after her light went out. His health slowly withered away as the darkness within him took total control. Organ failure loomed. In a frantic, desperate gamble for life, DM made a fatal, sudden choice. He quit his medications cold turkey, obsessively hoping to purge the dependency from his veins. The fallout was immediate and violent. His physical form revolted with agonizing withdrawal symptoms. The torture became all-consuming as he scrambled for any way to silence the inner screaming. He turned to alcohol to numb the pain, a decision that only fueled his destruction. What began as an escape became a lethal spiral, dragging his health into the abyss. Later, the mystery was solved. DM died from accidental asphyxia, a silent, tragic end. Authorities confirmed his death was the final complication of a lifelong battle with substance abuse. It was the ultimate, tragic intersection where mourning and addiction forged a chain of misery. Last night, Halifax's square filled with mourners honoring a girl whose story obsessed the nation. February 13th was the point of no return, changing their family's universe in one heartbeat. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers following the headlines felt the weight of her sudden absence. Years have passed, yet the haunting impact of that tragedy refuses to fade away. Her presence lingers in every memory. It's in the hushed names and secret tears. Loretta was standing on the edge of brilliance. She occupied a world where every horizon seemed infinite, and every door stood wide open. Her future was a careful construction of dreams and fresh starts. Built piece by piece, a massive secret joy was also approaching. The arrival of her child. A total rebirth. That hope brought light, yet her soul burned for a cause far beyond herself. Change was her obsession. She needed the world to wake up and finally understand. She aimed to educate and enlighten, believing that collective awareness could spark a true revolution. Truth was her only key to unlocking blinded eyes. Believing in the power of words, we conclude with Loretta's own hauntingly prophetic final thoughts. These are her own words, pulled from the thesis project she held most dear. She poured her research and secret hopes into this work, certain that progress was possible. She dreamed of global impact. Today, her message carries a heavy, unforgettable resonance. My path isn't rare. Thousands are currently trapped in this same dark cycle. I wouldn't wish these horrors upon another living soul. Through this work, I aim to awaken minds and prove that total transformation is possible.